Hi, Sam. Thank you for joining me again today. How are you doing today?
Doing okay. How about you?
Yeah, I'm doing good. Thanks for asking. So I know we've been together the past few weeks. Um, just been kind of, working on some different things. So I guess I just want to go through like a quick recap of, if there's something currently that's going on that's changed for the past few weeks, or if there's something kind of different you want to talk about today. But I know the past few weeks we've been talking about just kind of life right now and kind of where you're at, going through this transition period in your life right now, where you're about to finish school in a few weeks. So, maybe we want to touch on kind of how you're feeling closer, getting to that finish line. Um, just the transitions that have been happening, the emotions that have been coming along with that. I know we've been experiencing some burnout and, how that's kind of affected our other relationships in our lives and things like that. So I guess I'll kind of just turn it over to you for the first part and kind of just, there's something else you want to talk about today if you want to continue building off of that or kind of just how you're feeling in general about things right now.
Sure. Yeah. I have been using a lot of the things that we talked about in our previous sessions, and I feel like they've been helping. But now that it's like really down to the wire, there's kind of like a ton of stuff going on now. Like I've had a lot added to my plate in terms of, just like getting things figured out and things like that. I feel like it's gotten a little bit worse, but not because, not for lack of trying, but just there's been a lot of stuff that just, has recently got put on, things like that. So, um, I'm, looking forward to seeing if we can figure anything out to kind of help deal with that issue.
Yeah, so I guess I kind of just want to have you elaborate a little bit on kind of what you're currently feeling right now. I know you kind of said there's some stuff that's been added on in the past few weeks, so kind of either what specifically that is meaning or just kind of your emotions surrounding that, kind of what's going on right now, currently how you're feeling, what specifically you kind of want to work on or talk about.
Yeah. So I'm still feeling pretty overwhelmed. I guess like more specifically, it feels like it's like starting to actually really hit me that I'm not going to be in school anymore, and I have to, figure things out in terms of, deciding what that's going to look like for me and deciding, how that's going to work for me. And that has kind of like made me feel more stressed out and more overwhelmed. Um, Things that weren't as stressful before kind of feel more stressful just because they kind of feel magnified by the other big things in my life.
Yeah,
So I've just been feeling like more stressed and more overwhelmed recently.
yeah. Um, Kind of just a different way, I guess, of thinking about it or talking about it. So I guess we can just look towards like, future goals. But um let's just say like this problem was able to go away overnight. You weren't stressed, you weren't anxious about anything. Um, it kind of just went away on its own. Kind of what would life look like for you then, if you weren't to feel stressed or anxious or, didn't feel overwhelming all the time? How would like things in your life be different, or if you feel like they'd be different at all?
Um, I think I'd be a lot better at getting things done. I think a lot of times like I can get so overwhelmed that I kind of just like shut down and start rotting.
Mhm.
And that, obviously that doesn't achieve anything. And so I think if I, didn't feel this stress and didn't feel this like overwhelmed, then it would probably be easier for me to get a lot of like the secondary things done that I need to get done.
Mhm.
Like hanging up stuff that needs to be hanged up in terms of like, decorations and stuff like that. Like little secondary things that are like I'd like to check these off the list, but by the time that I'm done with the things that like absolutely have to get done, it kind of just feels like I'm so exhausted and stressed and overwhelmed that I can't even, do it or whatever. And so I think I'd be able to, you know, do those, or at least if I couldn't do them, I could still be okay with that and more, understanding with that. And I would hope that that would, go into kind of every part of my life.
Yeah, so not that there is anything wrong with any of, the feelings that you're experiencing right now. I think it's completely normal and um I think anybody in your position would totally feel that way. I know I would feel that way, just being overwhelmed. And I think it's just human nature, right? Like when we get overwhelmed, like we tend to just shut down and not want to do anything else. But I guess the reason I asked that question is I feel like it just gives us a basis of, what could happen if we work towards these things and achieve them, being able to kind of keep our emotions in check, keep them under control, not feeling overwhelmed. Like, how would that look like? How would our life be different? Sometimes I think when we get so overwhelmed, we kind of don't really see a way out, or we just don't really see things changing, or we kind of put ourselves in that negative headspace of thinking like, I'm so overwhelmed, kind of what's the point of this, even if I feel less overwhelmed, like what am I going to accomplish? So that's kind of why I just wanted to reframe it that way, thinking about, if I wasn't in a state of feeling so overwhelmed and anxious all the time, what could be different for me? What would life look like for me? I'd be able to maybe get some more things done, being able to accomplish more things. So, like I said, like your feelings are completely valid. I think anybody in that space would feel that way. Um, and I think it's just like human nature. But I think, that's just like something that you can look towards and work towards of, thinking like when I find good techniques and ways to kind of help me feel less overwhelmed, feel less anxious, these are going to be the positive outcomes of it, which I think is just a good way to look at it overall, if that makes sense. Um, Kind of on a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being like you've never felt this way in your life and this is like foreign territory, or one being like not really. How would you kind of rate your kind of your feelings of being anxious and overwhelmed right now?
Probably like a six. I think just in terms of like, um, I've felt, anxious and overwhelmed before, but not quite to this extent, you know? And so like I'm familiar with a lesser feeling of this, I guess, but not quite like where I'm at right now, if that makes sense.
Yeah. I guess like the reason I asked that question is too is that will help me, and then I think you even kind of just keep track of our progress over these next few weeks. So the next time we meet, don't be surprised if I kind of ask you the same question, and then we
Sure.
can kind of see, what kind of stuff helped throughout the week. I would even encourage maybe you, like personally, every day, even on the days we don't meet, to kind of keep track of that yourself. Keep track by numbers. I feel like it's just a good way of being able to just, like I said, see what worked well, what didn't work well. If we meet next time and things are an 8, obviously things aren't working, and we got to change
Yeah.
up, which is totally fine. But if we meet next time and things are even one number less, even a 5 or 4, that's great. That's progress. That's being able to work towards something, work towards a goal, which is great. Can you recall a time in your life? I kind of know you kind of mentioned on it with the last question being a 6, saying that there was a time when things have probably been worse and a time when things have been less. Can you recall or think of a time when you um, kind of gone or experienced these types of feelings before, maybe not specifically related to this situation?
Yeah, I think like probably back in like senior year of high schoolish when I kind of had everything already settled out, so I kind of just had to get through the year. I was, much more relaxed because there really wasn't anything big on my plate. I'd already been accepted to a school. I knew I was gonna pass. I wasn't gonna have any issues getting out of high school. And so I didn't really have any kind of, anxiety looking forward to the future. It was all stuff that I was excited about, looking forward to. And so like life just felt a lot calmer and a lot easier then.
Yeah. Was there kind of anything that you felt like you did during that time to kind of control your emotions or help keep things in check, kind of maybe less feel overwhelmed, like in general?
I don't know if there was anything that I did consciously. I mean, like I said, it was kind of just the factors of the time period in my life. It was just, it wasn't any kind of like difficult things going on. There wasn't anything I was worried about having to do or anything like that. Um, and so I think that kind of just spilled over into me feeling much calmer just because I didn't have anything I had to worry about at that time.
Yeah, I mean, I think, that's just like part of life, right? Like each new transition or new period that we kind of come into is going to come with its own challenges, its own feelings. And maybe you haven't experienced something like this before. but I just kind of want to encourage you to maybe look back on other times and, see maybe not specific techniques you did, but just even acknowledging like, okay, that was really hard at that time and I got out of it. And now I can look back and say, maybe that wasn't as hard as something I'm going through now, but then there's going to come a time where I'm going to look back on this situation now and, realize that I was able to kind of pull myself and get myself through that time period as well. And I think that can just be helpful, like looking towards the future and knowing that like the current state you're in isn't going to last forever, um, it's temporary. All the seasons of life we're in are, temporary and just being able to work through things. Um, we're kind of coming up on time here. Is there anything else you kind of wanted to bring up, discuss? Any last comments or questions?
No, I feel pretty solid about it.
Okay, perfect. So yeah, so for the next week, I guess I would just encourage kind of that being able to maybe like kind of just keep progress of your emotions. I'm at kind of that scale we talked about, kind of 1 through 10, and then kind of just see, if there are certain things in the day that triggered your emotions and why the numbers might be different. And we'll kind of touch base there next time and see, what helps and what didn't help.
Sure. Sounds good.
Okay, appreciate you joining me. I'll see you next time.
Ready? Thank you.